There's lots of changes happening with the college football playoffs. Let's talk about all of them.
The college football playoff is always in the news, so we're back on the big mountain to keep you updated.
Hey, it's great to have you here on the mountain. If you're new to our channel, I'm JY, and this is my good friend Steve. We want to do an episode here regarding the college football playoffs. There's been a lot of ongoings right now with this. We've done a little bit with the Schultz questioning and what he's been bringing forth. I know, Steve, there's been ongoings about an ESPN extension, and we thought there was going to be one, or it was close to happening, and then maybe it's backed off a little bit. You know, lots of stuff going on with the P2 and where that's going to be heading. So I know you have a lot you want to talk about.
Yep.
Where do you want to start?
Okay, so first of all, let's start. There's a lot that's been going on, a lot that's been coming out about the college football playoff. I mean, just since this last weekend, you and I have been sharing things. So first of all, I want to give a shout out, Ross Dellinger, Yahoo Sports. He's on Twitter at Ross Dellinger. He's done a great job covering all of this. So he kind of got our juices flowing as far as wanting to have a discussion on this. So I want to give him a shout out. So before we get to the newest news, let's kind of go back to Sunday, which seems so long ago now. So 3.5 days ago as we record. Ross came out with a report on Sunday that the commissioner of the MAC, Joe Steinbecker, had sent out a memo to all the teams, all the programs in the MAC, saying that the reported ESPN extension deal with the college football playoff was not done. All of that reporting was completely inaccurate, incorrect. And that basically not only had they not voted, the management committee had not voted on approving that extension, they hadn't even seen a draft of the new agreement.
It's pretty crazy.
Yeah. So that was kind of a bombshell. And that's just one of those things, like, you know, we have to remember a lot of these, there's good stuff on The Athletic, there's good stuff all around, but a lot of times they are in a competition to get out first, get the news out first, and maybe not in a competition to be the most accurate. So just something to kind of keep in mind. But the most interesting part of that, I mean, that was interesting that it wasn't done. It wasn't a done deal, even though it had been, reported that it was. But what was really interesting to me was his reporting also suggested that the deal was being held up due to multiple issues that the college football committee, the management committee needed to work out. And ESPN wasn't ready to get on board extending this until they got their own house in order and figured out what is this going to look like. So any thoughts on that before we move to Tuesday?
Yeah, you're exactly right. It is definitely people want to be the breaking news person or group or whatever the case may be. And there's a lot of mistakes happening right now with all that. That's why we take a day or two or a week to sometimes do an update. A, because we want to make sure it's accurate, and B, we want to, try to get more information on it. So, yeah, it's a little disappointing. Of course, somebody has to be first, but I feel like at this point in time, and it's not just CFP or college football in general or college athletes, it's everywhere. That everybody has to be first, whatever the breaking news is, and a lot of the time they're wrong.
Right.
And it's just a little disappointing. It's kind of that whole trust in the news anymore. They're wrong so often because they want to be first. That's their goal, is to be first. So anyway, I won't go off on that tangent much more, but it was interesting to hear that ESPN is waiting on some significant things to get resolved, and I think that's going to be some of the further things that we're going to talk about. I would think at the top of that list was the 66557 issue, and maybe that leads you into your next, segues you into your next comments.
Absolutely. And I don't think either one of us was really surprised that there were ongoing issues, because we've been talking about that in our other episodes. Some of the issues with Schultz, the PAC-12, and yes, the new format and all that. So, so you're absolutely right. So Tuesday, the Board of Managers, CFP Board of Managers, had another meeting, which we set the stage for that in one of our previous episodes.
Right.
Where President Schultz is from Washington State.
Washington State, yep.
So Washington State's President Schultz, he was scheduled to pitch his idea that we talked about on an episode of the PAC remaining one of the Power Five for CFP purposes, meaning as far as voting rights, just being continue to be treated as a Power Five, revenue distribution. We talked in another episode how the power conferences, power teams get a different piece of the pie, the revenue, and he wanted to continue to be a part of that Power Five because, in his words, They originally made that agreement as part of the autonomous 5,
Right.
Which meant, hey, we're going to make extra investments in our college football programs, college sports, and we're going to kind of get some extra kind of rights and guarantees and privileges from that. And so he was saying they were going to continue for that. Now, there was some speculation that he was going to kind of use that to hold over the committee,
right,
on the 5+7 model. But he didn't end up doing that. The committee really didn't. It sounds like they didn't really give him anything definitive or agree with him or approve his proposal. However, there are multiple reports that Washington State and Oregon State, they're going to get a couple extra $1 million from the CFP payouts the next 2 years, whether they make it in or not. They're going to get a couple extra $1 million just to kind of throw him a bone, help him out a little bit. And kind of smooth the way. So Schultz did not end up holding up the 5+7 proposal, which we thought could happen. Maybe we discussed. So the committee did vote unanimously to adopt that 5+7 model. So what does that mean? Well, in the past we had the 6+6 model. The top 6, when there were actual 5 power conferences, you basically had the top 6 conferences. The top 6 ranked conference champions would automatically get bids. Well, now that we've established the PAC isn't going to get an auto bid, they don't have a conference championship game. It only made sense to move to that 5-7 model for I think most of the commissioners agreed on that.
Right.
So it'll be the top 5 ranked conference champions. It doesn't necessarily mean, people think that means, okay, it'll be the ACC, it'll be the Big 12. Right. Well, a few years ago, Cincinnati, they were ranked ahead of Pitt, who was the ACC champion. Cincinnati was, I think, the AAC champion, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I think they were American at that time.
Yeah, so they were the AAC, and so in that scenario, they actually would have been ranked ahead of the ACC champion. Okay. So doesn't necessarily mean the ACC champion or Big 12, but that's kind of what everyone is assuming.
Right.
So those top 4 ranked conference champions would be seeded 1 through 4 and receive a first round bye. That's huge. That's an extra game. So the seeds 5 through 8 would host a home playoff game mid-December, about 2 weeks after the conference championship games. So they'll have to play an extra game, but they get to host a playoff game. Right. There could be some definite financial benefit to that. So seeds 5 through 8 will do that. And then the quarters and the semis will utilize the New Year's Six Bowls and other New Year's Bowls over the time period of let's say, like Christmas through New Year's, those few weeks, to work out through the quarters and semis. However, the championship game is not going to be held until January 20th, Inauguration Day, for this coming season, which to me is just crazy that we're not going to have a college football champion until almost the end of January. So, so they adopted the new model. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it definitely seems very elongated going till January 20th for sure. But hey, it's the way of the world. The longer you can build that up and sell, merch and advertising and all that kind of stuff, it's all about money these days. Let me go all the way back to Schultz.
Okay.
So I know you kind of went through a lot here. I want to focus on Schultz because those that are Big Mountain fans know that we've been following the PAC. And I just have a couple comments on kind of how that transpired over the last couple days. First of all, I will actually say he did hold up the 5-7 vote for a few months. Everybody thought that was going to happen. Was it in December, I think, that it was kind of a done deal. So he did get an extra 2 months out of this so that he could pitch this idea to them, is what he said publicly. Not really sure what he was pitching there, but certainly, as we know, they really wanted to maintain their P5 status. They say they're going to be doing that. However, I will say, so in the short term, he did hold it up. Now, he has said before that he's not holding the two one hostage against the other. I would say, yeah, for 2 months he kind of did because he wanted to get his pitch out there before he voted. But be that as it may, I might throw a little shade at him for that. But effectively now, and we talked about this on our last couple episodes, I mean, really the only thing the PAC still had going for it to say they were a Power 5 conference was the college football playoff.
Yep.
And that is now gone.
Yep.
So, we've had several episodes about how the definition for the PAC was still holding them to that P5 level. And this was really the last chance for him to maybe hold on to some of that. And I said in our last PAC episode that this could be very telling about where are the Pac-2 going to end up. Is this still going to be a rebuild? Are they going to look to try and move to a different P4 conference now? Or what are they going to do? And this, I mean, quite frankly, as we sit here right now, I think this killed any more talk about a P5. The Pac is not a P5 right now today. And yes, they got thrown some more money. To get back to that thing, I thought that was, I mean, there was rumors of that going on, that through these next 2 years, 25 and 26, they would still be viewed as P5 schools if they got into the CFP. Yes. So to me, that's not really that new, although maybe it wasn't finalized. It was just the rumorings of that. And I know CBS, Dennis Dodd actually put out there this whole, he kind of did it as this is what they got for Schultz's proposal. They got this several $1 million. I think now that his tweet or whatever, his X, whatever you call that now, has been removed.
Yeah.
And I think there was confusion. Is he talking about this is what they got because of Schultz's pitch, or this is just what they talked about before and they're going to be considered a P5 school if they get in? I don't really know if there's an answer to that, but yes, it does sound like they're going to be getting a few extra mil if they are successful in doing this. So I just wanted to go back to that. In terms of the 5-7 model, clearly that's where we're at now. You know, it was just a matter, in my opinion, it was just a matter of the management committee and the CFP board voting on this. I think we've all kind of known this was coming. So here we finally are. And I do think this was one of the big items for ESPN. I don't think it's the only item for ESPN, but it was. It's like, guys, figure this crap out. We're not going to go forward until you get your stuff figured out. I think this was one of those big items. And yeah, I think from the 5-7 model to move forward into kind of the last thing that you spoke, it's just where we are right now. You know, you still have the chance of a group of 5 school to get into that, which is kind of the same as they've always had. Everybody else is at large. So it's really just the loss of that guaranteed P spot, which was the PAC.
Right.
So, I mean, this really hurts the Beavs and the Cougs because they can only now get in via at-large. There is no conference championship. They're not in the Mountain West Conference Championship. So when they used to have potentially 2 options to get into the CFP, be the conference champion or get an at-large bid, they've just gotten one taken away from them. They can only get the at-large bid now. So anyway, those are my thoughts on all that.
Yeah, so I think I agree about 95% with what you said. Now, I will say, I think actually that was the decision, because they're not going to have a conference championship game. They were already, we knew months ago that they had no chance of getting one of those automatic bids.
True, right, okay, yeah.
So I think this actually, in some ways, helps them because now there's going to be an extra at-large bid.
Okay, all right.
So it's kind of like half dozen in one hand, you know, 6 one way, half dozen the other. But I wanted to ask you, what do you think as far as, what are your feelings? So we focus on, as for people who don't know, because we've done so much FSU, ACC, CFP coverage, our main focus on the Big Mountain is the Big Ten and the Mountain West. So JY, what are your feelings right now? Does this change anything for you as far as the Mountain West, them getting their path to get into the playoff?
Honestly, it does not. It does not. The only real path, realistic path for a Mountain West school to get into the college football playoff is to get that other, number 5 spot. You've got to be the best of the rest, as they say, and that is their best chance to get in. Very unlikely does a Mountain West school get an at-large bid here in terms of just being in the top 12. That's very unlikely. Their best bet is still to get that one spot. So I don't think the 6-6, 5-7 from the Mountain West or any of the group of 5, I don't think it really affects them much. Does it give them maybe a little bit of an extra because there's that one more at large? Okay, maybe it does. But by far their best bet to get in is to get that number 5, which would be number 6, now number 5 spot. So I think, does it help them? Maybe a teeny tiny bit, but overall, no, not at all. I think they're still gunning for that one spot like they would have been gunning for in a 6-6 model. That's my opinion for the Mountain West and all group of 5 schools, quite frankly.
Yeah, it makes sense. I think there was a little bit of chatter for a while when the AAC commissioner was holding things up that basically that maybe they could, if they kept that 6-6 model for the next 2 years, that you could get maybe 2 group of 5 champions. But that was kind of a stretch. I just can't see the power conferences and the networks wanting to allow that to happen, especially. We saw Liberty play Oregon this last year.
I want to talk. You keep going. I want to talk about that.
And there's no way ESPN or anyone who's writing the checks for this wants to see Liberty, two Liberties basically.
Right.
That kind of soured the grapes there. So what's your thoughts on that?
Well, that's exactly my. First of all, I don't know if we have any Conference USA viewers here. I'm going to crap on Conference USA. That is the worst conference to pick from for this type of event. And if that continues, it's only going to turn the Big Ten and the SEC away from allowing that. You've got to pick the schools that are worthy of this. Okay, I get it. They were ranked the highest. It was a crap ranking, and we talked about it at the time. SMU was much more deserving. SMU should have been the school. Now SMU's not even going to be in a group of 5 anymore. But be that as it may, you got to get a school from an American, from a Mountain West, or from a Sun Belt. I'm sorry, MAC and Conference USA. It can't come from those conferences. It's got to come from one of the other 3. And quite frankly, it's going to matter kind of who they are. Like, it can't be a Liberty. Let's get a Texas. Like, you got to have a really good Texas school that's got a bit of a football name. And I hate to say that's part of it, but that's got to be part of it in order for them to continue to allow this. Yeah. Or the Big Ten and the SEC they're going to shut it out, and I hope that doesn't happen. I really think if they pick the right schools for the correct reasons, it's a good thing to have happen. It helps motivate all conferences and all division or conference champions and all that kind of stuff. I think it's a great thing, but they got to be picking the right schools, or it is not gonna last. That's my thoughts.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, and I think Liberty benefited as far as the ranking thing from how the past 2 to 3 years had gone when Hugh Freeze was there as their coach, and they did have some pretty good players. But I totally agree with you, and that Liberty, and I know you were on your soapbox, that Liberty versus Oregon game, and everybody had the same, that was not good for anybody.
No.
And we don't want to see that in the playoff. So that's a great segue, though. Your last comment is a great segue into the last thing I want to talk about. So it's important to remember this agreement, this 5-7 model, and everything we've been talking about. All of this just goes for the last 2 years, 24 and 25 seasons, the last 2 years of the current CFP agreement, basically.
Yes, right.
Nothing is guaranteed after that. There's no TV media deal. There's nothing. There's no structure. So that's agreed to beyond that point. At this point. Now the Big Ten and the SEC. You brought up that those two allowing, these two power conferences allowing these small teams to be in. So there's a lot of rumblings right now that the Big Ten and the SEC are pushing for if they are going to continue with this Division I wide college football playoff, they want more teams. They feel like they have the best teams or the best conferences, the most valuable teams. They want more automatic berths into the playoffs. They want a bigger piece of the pie, the revenue, because from their argument, people are tuning in to watch Ohio State, Michigan, Georgia, Alabama, not Liberty,
right?
Not Oklahoma State necessarily, if they're or Arizona if they're the Big 12 champion. So they are really pushing for that. And right now they hold all the cards. That's something we talked about with Schultz. He had his last kind of trump card that he was trying to play.
Right.
And you and I talked about short term versus long term. Short term, maybe he could get something done by playing that card, but long term, the more they push back, the more the Big Ten and the SEC, the Power 2, are going to consider just taking their ball and going and creating their own game, their own playoff, their own league, whatever.
Yep.
There was reporting today that the Big Ten and the SEC are today meeting, possibly with some other commissioners, to talk about what is the CFP going to look like going forward. Mm-hmm. Does it behoove them to stay in there or go and break away and do their own thing? They feel like they're bringing, maybe 80% of the value to this. Are they getting 80% of the revenue? So I think we're in a really, really important time. I think both of us would love to see, and you made some great points about this 5+7 model, and getting that, that last team has to be a good, valuable team that can compete and not embarrass themselves,
right,
and not embarrass everyone else,
and not embarrass the group of 5.
Exactly.
I mean,
yes,
that's what you're there for.
You're right. Yes, exactly. So, Big Ten, SEC, and some other commissioners meeting today to decide the future of the college football playoff. There's been a lot of reporting, a lot of rumblings that they may decide to go and do their own playoff, let everyone else do their own. So just want to have your thoughts on that, on where we are, what you think may happen, and especially from that perspective, the Mountain West perspective, the group of 5. What do you think?
Yeah, I totally get the more teams. I think 16 would be great. I'd be totally up for that. The more auto, I think as long as there's more teams, I would be up for more auto. Given a 12-team playoff, I would not be up for more autos for any conference.
Right.
I think in a 12-team, they should leave it as is. If they go to a 16-team, then okay, I get it. Do you go 4 and 4, 4 auto for Big, 4 auto for SEC? You still get your 3 in the current model, other champions. So again, if they're still around, the ACC, the Big Ten, and your top group of 5, and then you still have 5 at-large bids, I'd be 4, 4, 3, and 5. Totally fine with that. There's your 16, but you got to expand in order to do that. And the revenue piece, I get that too.
Yeah.
I mean, the revenue's driven by who's watching the game. Yeah. I would say, I think, let's go to a 16 model for a minute. Let's go to a 16 model. I do think the first round of a 16 model, assuming it's 1 versus 16, and they do it that way, and there's not these 8 buys into the second round. Now, I'm just going to say it's a 16 and 8 plays 16 and off you go. I get the first round absolutely should be geared towards the top 8 get 75% of the revenue and the bottom 8 get 25 or whatever the heck they decide. I don't really care. But when you get into the final, after you get past the first round, to me, when you get to the final 8 and a 16, it should just be 50-50. You paid your dues, maybe a lower team, a lower conference team, won a game. When you get to that final 8, what would be considered, I guess, the quarterfinals, 50-50 that sucker the rest of the way. There's people are going to turn into a quarterfinal anyway, right? And if you don't do it for the 8, at least do it for the semis and the finals. You can't have this funky model where just because you're a Big, you get 75%, and just because you're anybody else, you get 25. Even though you're in the college football championship game, that's crap. So I would say there needs to be, yes, early on, I get it. Certainly swing the revenue to the people that are tuning in, which is going to be your Bigs, your SECs, all that kind of stuff. Your Notre Dame maybe, although who knows. But I think as you get into that, people are going to tune in because of what it is, college football fans, and you have to have a much more equal share of that moving forward. So that's what I would throw out there. I mean, who knows? I know the Big and the SEC, they got their big boy pants on, and they can play big boy ball. Yeah. And it's how much pushback are they gonna do? I think with Schultz, he did what he could. He got what he could. If it's that $2 million, that's all he got. And if he got it, good. We said, hey, you might as well play a card when you have it, because that card's going to be taken from you real soon, and now it is. So if he did get this $2 million or whatever the millions are, hey, he got something for it. Yep. So that's my thought.
Okay. And I definitely agree with everything you said now. So I'm going to give you my perspective. Big Ten fan. Obviously, everyone knows I'm a Penn State fan. Big Ten fan. That's my focus.
Yeah, stomp on the little guy.
No. Okay. So for me, we've talked. I totally get it. The Big Ten and the SEC. They're the most valuable conferences. They have the big. The big fan bases, the big teams that are making all the money, bringing in the money. Mm-hmm. I love the idea of going to 16, which I think I read that the Big Ten commissioner is in favor of going to 16. Yes. And that is to me that's the perfect number to still allow. And I would love to keep the if you're still calling it G5, whatever. Yeah. The smaller conferences, I would love to still have them have a buy into it, a chip in a chair. Yep. They have a chance to get in there. Years ago, Boise State upset Oklahoma. Mm-hmm. It just makes for more fun. Gives them a chance to get in, and it's just fun. It's just good football, more entertaining.
Who doesn't love a Cinderella story? Yeah. You look at the college hoops, and you always have that. Usually, March you have that one team. There's always that Cinderella, and they get gobs of press, right? Yes. That's what makes it fun. It's college sports. Don't take that away.
Totally agree. So I think that I'm with you. I think the move to 16 is perfect. you could do that where the Big Ten and the SEC each get 4 bids, and then you got they got half the bids. The other half can go to everybody else. They can figure it out, split it up between at-large bids and other conference champions. I think that's a great way. I hope that they go that way. I do think, Schultz, he held that card a little bit. Maybe he got some things that he wanted. I think that it's good that he ultimately relented and let this 5-7 go through.
Short term, long term.
Yes.
I agree with you. It's good that he did it now.
Exactly. Yep. Because if, the Big Ten and the SEC didn't get what they want, they could easily just tomorrow walk away and keep 80 to 90% of the revenue and do their own tournament, do their own championship. Now, will we see that in the future? I think it's up for grabs. It's 50-50. Do we see them playoff? Do we see them go and do their own thing, create their own league, have their own playoff? Now, what I will say is, even though the NCAA has nothing to do with the college football playoff, I think their battle with the NCAA is actually going to be very meaningful when it comes to how the Power 2 conferences decide to operate with this CFP. If the NCAA doesn't keeps fighting, keeps doing all this stuff, I think they're just going to want to go, break away, and just be their own thing. They can make their own rules. If we can get some kind of reform through the NCAA, whether Charlie Baker's plan or a plan that they're more happy with, something's got to give with the NCAA. They need to just stop. They need to just take a step back and stop. The courts have said what they're doing is wrong. The power conferences do not want to be a part of that. So to me, that's the biggest factor. If we can get the NCAA to reform, I think that there's an opportunity to still have traditional college football where we have the big schools playing the small schools, where we have some regionality. Yep. We have all that fun stuff, and we can, and then the Big Ten and the SEC don't need to go and play their own game. So that's just kind of my thoughts on that. Do you have any follow-up comments?
No, I think I've said enough. You're the guy that knows all this stuff, Steve. I appreciate you bringing this to us because there has been so much kind of ongoings. Maybe not one of these is maybe a standalone, but I really want to get back to the Schultz thing because we just did an episode for those that, again, follow the PAC stuff. So it's good to hit that. Good to hit the ESPN. Good to hit the 5-7. Kind of hitting all in one fell swoop. Really good discussion. Appreciate you bringing it. So I think with that, we'll wrap this guy up. Stay on us. Make sure you guys give us a like on this. Make sure you give us a subscribe if you like our content. As Steve said, we do all things Big Ten Mountain West, but we're deep into all the college football stuff anymore. We are going to plan to start doing weekly updates for the Big Ten, weekly updates for the Mountain West. We'll probably start that in March. Just hit on whatever hot topics there are. They might be a few minutes long, or maybe something cool's happening and it'll be big.
Spring ball, transfer portal, coaching changes, all kinds of stuff.
All kinds of goody stuff happening on. Also, remember, Steve's doing a college football 2030. We'll have our second episode coming out on that here just in another week and a half, I think. So we'll keep going on that series. Hopefully you like that as well. Again, give us a like, and we'll see you guys next time on the Big Mountain.